I caught my wife cheating with my brother. I thought nothing could hurt more, until my mother confessed she had known for 2 months and said nothing.
Let's rewind to where it all started. I've been married to Sarah for 6 years. 6 years of what I thought was a solid, steady life. We met back in the winter of 2017, on a night so cold the windshield of my old Ford pickup was frosted over before I even got it started. I just finished a long day at Hank's auto shop, my hands still black with grease, my shoulders aching from wrestling a busted transmission all afternoon. I didn't feel like going home to an empty house, so I drove an hour out to Bozeman, pulled into a dive bar called the Rusty Spur, and figured I'd nurse a beer to take the edge off. That's when I saw her. Sarah was sitting at the bar, wrapped in a red sweater that popped against the dull wood paneling, her blonde hair spilling over her shoulders like something out of a magazine. She had these green eyes that caught the light every time she laughed, and when I fumbled my beer and splashed half of it on my shirt trying to look smooth, she didn't miss a beat. Just slid me a napkin with a grin and said, "Rough day, huh?" I was done for right then and there. We got talking and it flowed easy. She told me she'd moved to Montana from Idaho a few months back. Chasing a job at a bank after a nasty breakup left her wanting a clean slate. She was sharp, funny, didn't mind my dumb jokes or the fact that I smelled like motor oil. I asked for her number before I finished my beer, and by the next weekend, I was picking her up in Whitefish for coffee at the Black Bear Cafe. One coffee turned into dinner, then a drive up to Glacier National Park where we hiked until the sun dipped behind the peaks, her laughing at me when I tripped over a rock, trying to keep pace with her city girl turned outdoors vibe. She'd tease me about being a grease monkey who couldn't handle a trail, and I'd shoot back that she'd freeze solid her first winter without me to keep her warm. It was effortless, like we'd been waiting to find each other. A year later, I proposed. It was August, the air warm and thick with the smell of pine, and I took her out to Flathead Lake just as the sun was setting, turning the water into a sheet of gold and red. I'd saved up for months to buy a plain silver ring. Nothing flashy, just a thin band with a tiny chip of a diamond I could barely afford. I got down on one knee by the shore, my palms sweaty, my voice shaking as I said, "Sarah, I'm not perfect and I don't have a lot, but I'll give you everything I've got if you'll have me. Will you marry me?" She didn't answer right away, just stared at me, her eyes wide and glistening, then threw herself into my arms, sobbing us into my neck as I held her tight. I slipped that ring on her finger, and we sat there by the lake until the stars came out, planning a future I thought was bulletproof. We tied the knot the next spring in a tiny chapel on the outskirts of Whitefish. It was a small affair, just a dozen friends, a few coworkers, and family crammed into wooden pews that creaked every time someone shifted. Sarah looked like a dream in a white dress that hugged her just right, wildflowers tucked in her hair that she'd picked from a field the day before. I stood up front in a rented suit that pinched at the shoulders, grinning like a fool as she walked toward me, her dad, Bill, giving me a nod that said I'd better not screw this up. After the eye dose, we moved into a 2-bedroom house I'd bought on the cheap, a fixer-upper with sagging gutters and a porch that groaned under my weight, but it was ours. The backyard was a postage stamp, barely big enough for a grill, but Sarah turned it into her own little Eden, planting daisies and tulips every spring until it looked like something out of a postcard. I come home from the garage, hands black and aching, and find her out there in her overalls, dirt smeared on her cheeks, waving me over to check out her latest blooms. Those were the good days. Life settled into a groove after that. I kept my job at Hank's, spending my days under hoods and over oil pans, fixing beat-up trucks and sedans for the folks in town. It wasn't a gold mine, but I loved the work, taking something broken and making it run smooth again, the hum of an engine firing up like a little victory every time. Sarah worked at First Interstate Bank downtown, a short walk from home, smiling at customers and balancing accounts behind a glass counter. We didn't have piles of cash, but we didn't need them. Most nights, we'd cook together, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, or chicken thighs grilled out back, then flop on the couch with Netflix, her legs draped over mine as I ran my fingers through her hair. Weekends were for escaping, packing a cooler with sandwiches and beer, driving out to the mountains to fish or camp under a sky so clear you could see the Milky Way stretch out forever. We'd bicker sometimes, me leaving wrenches on the kitchen table, her forgetting to mail the water bill, but it always ended with a laugh, a kiss, and her calling me a stubborn ass while I pulled her close. I thought we were unbreakable. My brother Mike was woven into that life, too. He's 2 years older, built like he could bench press my truck. With dark hair he kept swept back and a grin Mom swore could charm the devil himself. She always said he got the looks while I got the grit. Mike worked construction, big jobs like bridges and warehouses that took him all over Montana and Wyoming, living out of motels and his beat-up black pickup half the year. But every few weeks, he'd roll back in a whitefish, dust trailing behind him, and show up at our door with a six-pack of Coors and a grin. "Hey, little bro," he'd say, kicking off his boots, "miss me?" I'd roll my eyes, grab a beer, and we'd sit around while he spun tales about crane malfunctions or dumbass co-workers who couldn't swing a hammer right. Sarah would join in, perched on the arm of the couch, laughing at his over-the-top stories and tossing in her own jabs. "Mike, you're so full of it. I can't believe they let you near heavy machinery." He'd wink at her, fire back something smart, and we'd all crack up. I never thought anything of it, just family doing what families do. But then, around mid-July, things started shifting. The days were long and hot, the kind where the sun beats down until the asphalt shimmers, and I first noticed it with Sarah. She'd come home later than usual, her purse slung over her shoulder, her hair a little messy like she'd been rushing. She'd say she had to stay late at the bank, some new software rollout, or a stack of paperwork that wouldn't wait. I'd offer to swing by and pick her up, save her the walk, but she'd brush me off with a quick, "No need, Jake." I went home with Lisa from work. Lisa? Who the hell was Lisa? I'd never met her, never heard Sarah mention her before, but I didn't push. "Okay," I'd say, "just let me know if you need me." She'd nod, flash a tired smile, and that'd be it. Then there were the nights at home. She'd sit at the kitchen table after dinner, her phone lighting up with soft buzzes as she typed away, a little smirk tugging at her lips. I'd lean over from the sink, drying a plate, and ask, "What's so funny?" She'd jump a bit, like I caught her off guard, then say, "Oh, just some stupid meme from the girls at the bank," before flipping her phone face down fast. I'd nod, let it go, but it started happening more, her texting, smiling, shutting me out of whatever was making her light up like that. I told myself I was overreacting, work stress, maybe, or just her needing space. Sarah was always good at bottling stuff up, and I didn't want to be the guy who nagged her over nothing. Mike started showing up more too. He'd say he was in town to check on Mom. Helen, our mom, who's lived in the same little house a few blocks away since Dad bailed when I was 12. It's a weathered wooden place with a sagging porch and a yard she never bothers to mow, but she's too stubborn to move. Mike would pull up in his truck, beer in hand, saying, "Thought I'd drop by. See how you two are holding up." I'd wave him in, glad to see him, and we'd settle into the living room like old times. But he'd stay longer than he used to. Hours sometimes, long after the first six-pack was gone. He'd talk to Sarah about random crap. Her job, the heat wave, some crime show they both watched, while I'd be out back fiddling with my truck's carburetor or mowing the patchy grass. I'd come in and find them laughing, her leaning a little too close, him sprawled out like he owned the place. One night, I walked in from the garage, my hands still smeared with oil, and caught the mid-laugh. Sarah was sitting on the couch's armrest, inches from Mike, her hand brushing his shoulder as she handed him a beer from the fridge. They were chuckling about something, their eyes locked for a beat too long, and when I stepped in, they both jerked like kids caught sneaking cookies. "What's so funny?" I asked, tossing my rag on the counter. Mike, fists clenched, "Get out of my house." "Now," he glared, muttered, "You'll regret treating your brother like this," then grabbed his jacket and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Sarah bolted upstairs, crying, and I heard her yanking drawers open, stuffing a bag. She came down, suitcase in hand, pleading, "Jake, I'm sorry, okay? Can we talk?" But I was empty. "Get out," I said flat. "I'm done." She stood there, tears streaming, then dragged her bag to her car and drove off. I didn't watch her leave. The house went silent after that, a heavy, suffocating quiet. I stood there, staring at the couch, the pizza cold on the table, my world in pieces. I sank into the recliner, couldn't touch that damn couch, and grabbed one of Mike's leftover beers. It tasted like ash, but I drank it anyway, my mind spinning. How long? How many times have they snuck around? Right here, while I was at work busting my ass. I kept seeing her tears, hearing her just once, but it didn't fit. You don't get that easy with someone from one mistake. I didn't sleep. Stayed in that recliner all night, the TV flickering mute with some infomercial crap I didn't care about. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Her laugh, his hand, and it twisted the knife deeper. Around 3 a.m., I got up, wandered the house like a ghost. The kitchen still had her apron on the hook, flour smudged from last week's biscuits. Upstairs, the bed was half made, her pillow gone, her closet a mess of empty hangers. She was gone, and I was left with nothing but questions. Morning came gray and cold, the sun barely cutting through the clouds. My phone buzzed downstairs, and I dragged myself to it, head pounding from beer and no sleep. It was Mom. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Jake, honey," she said, her voice shaky. "It's me. Mike called me last night, told me what happened. Can you come over? I need to see you." I rubbed my face, throat tight. "Mom, I don't know if I can talk right now." "Please, Jake," she said, "just for a bit." "I am worried, Kropka." I sighed, too wiped to fight. "Fine. I'll be there in 20. Mom's house was a quick drive, down a street lined with old pines bowing under their own weight. It's a small place with siding faded from years of wind and snow, the porch sagging with empty flower pots she never filled. I pulled in, tires crunching gravel, and sat there, staring at the door. Mom had always been my anchor, tough, unyielding, the woman who raised me and Mike alone after Dad split. I hoped she'd just hold me, tell me to be okay like when I was a kid. I knocked once, then walked in, door unlocked as always. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the old oak table, a mug of coffee steaming in her hands but untouched. Her gray sweater hung loose, her silver hair a mess, and her eyes were red, like she'd been up all night too. "Jake," she said, standing. "Oh, honey, come here." She hugged me tight, her lavender soap smell hitting me, but I couldn't hug back. We sat, her across from me, reaching for my hand. "Mike told me everything," she said, quiet. "He said you caught him and Sarah talking, got mad, kicked him out. He's upset, says you overreacted." I pulled my hand away, staring. "Talking," I said, sharp. His hand was on her leg, Mom. "They weren't just talking." She flinched, gripping her mug. "Jake, I don't know what to say. I can't believe they'd." She stopped, her eyes dropping, and I saw it, a flicker, a secret. "Mom," I said, leaning in, "what's going on? You're acting weird." She didn't look up, just stared at that mug. After a long silence, she took a shaky breath and said, "Jake, I've known about Sarah and Mike for 2 months." It hit me like a punch to the gut. You knew." I choked out. She nodded, slow, heavy. "And you didn't tell me?" Her eyes met mine, tears brimming, and it all poured out. "It was August," she said, trembling. "I was in the backyard, watering the roses by the shed. Late afternoon, sun low, and I heard voices, quiet, sneaky. I peeked around, and there they were, behind the pine tree. Mike had his arms around Sarah, her hands on his chest. Then they kissed. Not a peck, Jake, a real kiss, long and deep like they'd done it before. My stomach lurched, the image burning into my brain. "I didn't know what to do," she said, wiping her eyes. I watched my son and my daughter-in-law like that, frozen. When they stopped, I stepped out and yelled at them. They begged me not to tell you, said they'd end it, that it was a mistake. I couldn't breathe. "So why didn't you tell me? You're my mom." She looked away, tears falling. "I didn't want the family to break, Jake. I thought if I kept quiet, it'd stop. I didn't want to lose you both, didn't want you hurt. And I told them if they didn't do what I said, I'd tell you." I laughed, bitter and cold. "Do what you said? You mean you blackmailed them?" She nodded, voice a whisper. "I just wanted things stable. I told Sarah to treat you better, told Mike to stay away. But they didn't listen." I stood, the room spinning. My wife, my brother, and now my mom, all of them liars. "You're not my mom anymore," I said, ice in my voice. "I don't need you." She called after me, "Jake, wait." "I'm sorry." But I walked out, got in my truck, and drove home, leaving her crying at that table. Back home, I couldn't sit still. The betrayal wasn't just Sarah and Mike. It was Mom, too, the one person I thought had my back. I paced the living room, my boots scuffing the hardwood, my mind storm. They'd played me, all of them. and I'd been too dumb to see it. But I wasn't going down like this. I decided right then they'd pay. Not with fists or yelling. I'd hit them where it hurt most. I'd expose them, make them face what they'd done, and I'd do it my way. First, I grabbed Sarah's laptop from the dining table. She'd left it when she bolted. Password was still our wedding date, a sick joke now. I opened her iMessage, and there it was, months of text with Mike. "Miss you tonight," she'd written. "Wait till Jake's gone," he'd replied. Photos too. Them in my bedroom, on my bed, grinning like I was nothing. I printed it all, page after page, a thick stack of proof. Next, I called Dad, Tom, living in Kalispell since the divorce. "Dad," I said, "I need you here Saturday. Big family stuff, can't explain now." He agreed, voice gruff. Then I called Bill, Sarah's dad in Helena. "Bill, come to my place Saturday. It's important." He said yes, worried. Saturday came, and I set the stage, papers on the table, chairs in a circle. I called Sarah. "We need to talk." She agreed, probably thinking I'd cave. Texted Mike, "Be here at 2." He said fine. Told Mom, "Come at 2. Family meeting." She came, nervous. Dad and Bill arrived, confused but stern. At 2, they were all there, Sarah teary, Mike cocky, Mom quiet. I stood, heart pounding, and said, "Here's the truth. Sarah's been cheating with Mike for months, right here." Mom knew and hid it, threatened them to keep quiet. I dropped the stack, texts, photos, onto the table. Bill exploded. "Sarah, what the hell?" She sobbed, "Dad, I'm sorry." Mike yelled, "You've got no right, Jake." Dad shut him down. "You're a disgrace, Mike." Turned to Mom. "Helen," you sank low. Bill dragged Sarah out, disowning her. Dad patted my shoulder. "Good job, son." Mike stormed off. Mom sat silent, broken. I filed for divorce after. Sarah didn't fight, took her stuff, and left. Mike skipped town, Idaho bound. Mom called, begging forgiveness, but I wasn't ready. I sold the house. Couldn't stay in that graveyard of memories. Moved to Missoula, opened a garage, started fresh. New friends, new life, no lies. Family's who you choose, not what you're born with. Sarah, Mike, Mom, they taught me that the hard way. Now, I'm free, happier than ever.